Okay, you're gonna let me record? Hello, I'm really excited to be able to introduce firmware updates for both Arbhar and Lúbadh. This is both modules now updated and running the version 2.1 firmware, which these updates they bring some major comfort life features and improvements, optimizations to the engine, some pretty musical features. The update process, I've got some pre-existing videos that detail the steps to update. I'll link to them below. Because this is updates to the version 2.0 codebase, it's a very quick and easy process. It just needs a file dragged onto the USB drive, and it's largely automated. So this video I'm going to go into sections specifically on Arbhar and specifically on Lúbadh to show off the new features one by one, but I'll give a bit of an overview first. So the most substantial element to these updates is a new workflow and a new method of managing presets and curating configurations and presets. So there is now a purpose-built preset editor that's much more interactive, drag and drop, documented. This is done via the USB drive, so each module actually generates an HTML file, which is built into the root directory of the USB drive. So these just simply need opened up in your preferred browser, and you can drag and drop existing presets or just start from scratch, edit them, view the outputted config file, and then just drag that onto the USB drive and you're good to go. It's a hugely improved workflow, which I think is going to really open up a lot of capability and versatility of the two modules. Let's take a quick look at each of them. So I'm going to turn down my Lúbadh, just the Arbhar a little bit. Cool. So the Arbhar in particular, it's got a lot of under the hood improvements. A lot of the code base has essentially been rewritten for allowing for a lot of optimizations. So if existing Arbhar users remember, going back to version 1, the reverb, delay, and panning effects were available, but they were very much a one at a time only option. Basically because the engine was not capable of running more than one at once, but that's now a thing of the past. So on this preset, I've actually got a foundation level of reverb that's just adding a little bit of ambience under the hood. The panning's also predefined, so it's got a nice equal power panning stereo spread of distribution of grains, and I still have access to my delay effect via the mod CV, so that's give myself manual control via a Vinca here. So having access to all these extra parameters in parallel now, it's gives a lot of capability. A lot of options for patches. I'll switch over to the Lúbadh quickly, so let's bring that down. Here we go. So what's going to be most noticeable off the bat? There's ambience, there's reverb. So likewise, the Lúbadh has had a major upgrade in terms of efficiency under the hood. So there is now an integrated built-in reverb effect that is combined in with the tape emulation section. So if I've got my time pot defined to control tape emulation, if I have any degree of reverb enabled as part of that parameter, as I bring up my tape emulation, I'm also bringing up my reverb In this configuration, which I'll get into in the looper section of this video, I'm actually using both decks together, so the left side is just a clean overlay of the new Reverb algorithm, and then my right deck is in a octave delay configuration, which, because it's got analog feedback and it's overlaying itself, there's this nice capability of like shimmer reverbs, which are really fun to play with. Yeah, so a lot of fun stuff to explore with both these modules. I'll go into detail per module and really show how to get started with preset editing and loading and saving custom presets and accessing these new features. So hope you enjoy. Thanks for watching. Okay, let's customize a preset on the Arbhar using the new preset editor. This patch I've got pre-configured. This is a bit of a go-to patch of mine where I've got harmony controlling psych, or it's actually psych and toner, and this will give me a nice natural minor triad chord progression, minor tonality chord progression. It's mostly the psych, so it's mostly super saw into filter, but there's a little bit of rhythmic momentum underneath, and that's coming from the root being played by the toner, and the octone here is just sequencing through a bit of movement over the wavefold depth. Keeps it a bit more lively. Manual gate from the harmony is going to a cease 2, and that's opening up my 1047 low pass filter, as well as a stereo VCA on the die here at the top channel. The voice is made stereo, that's using the DAP, and there's just a couple of slow LFOs from the Oct here. That's just adding a bit of motion and movement and phase between our left and right channels. So you can see there's a bit difference between the green and blue traces on the scope. So that's just adding a little bit of space to the voice. Cool, so that's the bass voice, and what I want to do with the Arbhar is introduce some effect, and I'm going to curate it more as a granular delay, so it will be a bit of echo, a bit of textural resynthesis of the dry voice. Yeah, so this is going to be a technique where I'm going to self-patch the Arbhar and use the trigger output and patch that to my capture input, so it's able to, on the end of the follow cycle, is generating an end of cycle trigger, and it will just force itself to recapture. So yeah, it forces the Arbhar into more of a ring buffer type configuration, which is fun. But yeah, first we need to tell it what to do. So I'm going to pull my USB drive, which is in the expander down here, and load that up on my laptop. Here we go, got a USB disk. This should mostly look familiar to anyone that's got the Arbhar running version 2.0. We can see this was recently updated to the version 2.1, so we've got an applied updater file here. This is just a little 0 bytes file that it's confirmation that the update was successful, so that can be deleted. You don't need to keep that. File structures, all the same. We've got our scenes, got our library, updater for firmware updates, and then we have this new HTML file. So this is the new preset editor. It's essentially a locally running website, where if I double click on that, it's going to open up in my default browser, and this is the new way of curating presets. The mechanics under the hood is still text files that the Arbhar is recognizing and loading, but you don't need to use a text editor anymore to modify the parameters. And there are quite a lot of nice comfort life features built into this. So there's a little drop zone here where I could drag and drop some existing presets. So I could pull in this preset here from scene 1.4, loaded successfully, and that's tweaked all the configuration. So it's a way that you can addition or like see what the parameters are of any particular preset, or I can just click on the drop zone and target and load a file that way. Or I can just start from a template. So I've got these 6 alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, the 6 factory presets that the Arbhar has built in. So I can start with one of them as a reference point, which is what I'm going to do. So let's select delta, the follow mode, load preset template, and that's tweaked all the variables. I'm just going to work my way down the list and just make some fine-tune adjustments to better suit the preset for this context. What you'll also see is under each of these sections are a little details drop-down tab. These are little excerpts from the user manual or its new written documentation, so it just fleshes it out a little bit more and gives a bit more context and a bit of advice on what certain controls do. Some of them even have little excerpts of graphics from the user manual and stuff. Yeah, Sebastian's done a really good job on this. Even at the top here, you can show or hide all parameters documentation as well. Cool. So let's work our way down the list and fine tune as we go. Okay, mono stereo. So I've got this patched up in stereo, so I'm going to change that over to stereo mode. Because I'm patched out in stereo as well, I'll need to apply phase correction. Retrigger for capture mode, that's all fine. Onset modes. So this is one that I need to make sure is the right setting, which it is because I'm using the follow mode template. But the onset detection mode is onset's essentially disabled, but I'm using the trigger output will generate an end of cycle trigger every time the follow length is completed, and that's what I'll use to self patch. So zeta for that. Scan and follow modes. So I'll tweak this slightly. I'm going to go with unidirectional for the speed control. So this would be the scan pot here. If I turned it all the way down, there would be 0 follow speed. So it would mean the playhead would stick at the start of the buffer. The default behavior being bidirectional is you can get reverse movement of this, but I just need it forward direction only for a looping ring buffer. The rest is all fine. Oops. Random timing. Okay, mod CV. So I do have CV patched to mod, and that's coming from this Vinca here. So this is giving me bipolar manual offset that I can control. You can see that shown on the LED here. So that's patched into my mod CV. So this is a good opportunity to show the fact that the V2.1 firmware, it's got the 3 mod effects are actually running in parallel under the hood now. So I'm going to change this back, or change this over to delay. So I'm going to give myself manual control via this Vinca CV generation, manual control over the delay effect. But then for panning and reverb, I'm going to have them hard-coded. So for panning, I'm actually going to go with a negative percentage, which sounds weird, but if I click on details, I can scan down and I can see what that means. So for the panning behavior, 0 volts or 0% is the default, so that's hard left, hard right, distributed grains. If I send it positive CV, approaching 100%, then that's going to converge the placement until you've got a single mono grain fired between both outputs. If I go negative CV, it does a weird thing where it'll flip over and land on the opposite panning distribution. But if I'm at negative 50%, it means it's going to be doing an equal power panning based distribution across the stereo field, which I'll be playing with a bit more because it's a lot less not aggressive, but a lot less dramatic as the default, where it's hard left, hard right. So this kind of just spreads things out, especially when I'm using more of an effect type context here. So that's minus 50%. Reverb, Seb was saying that 30% is quite a nice sweet spot for just a foundation ambience, but without it getting too muddy. And last selection here, effect order. You can actually choose whether the delay effect goes into the reverb or whether they're operating in parallel. So I'm going to go with parallel because I think, again, for muddiness, if the delay is going into the reverb, there's a lot more content that could then be sort of spread out. Whereas if it's in parallel, I've got a bit more clarity of my delay effects and sort of resonances there, and the reverb's kind of just an ambient bed underneath. Center frequency wavetable, we don't need to change that. Quantization of random pitch deviation. So I do have pitch deviation turned up a bit on the Arbhar, and I've got a slow attenuated LFO going in to move that. So I'm going to keep the defaults that are with the follow mode preset, and that's giving me combinations of octave up, octave down across the range of that parameter, which will be quite nice. It'll stay very tonal, but it'll add little octave throws of grains up and down. I guess I should also name this so I can tell what the file is. Preset name, you customize here. So let's go with grain delay super happy fun time. So as good a name as any. Okay, scroll down, generate configuration. We can see it's actually just generated the text file in the same format that presets used to be done, but now I didn't need to open a text editor, which is quite nice. And all I need to do now is download the Arbhar preset. I'm going to put that, just so it's easy to find, I'm going to throw that into scene, bank 1, scene 1. Save that there. Cool, there we go. And if I go to the folder, oops. Oh, there we go. That should be it now. Green delay, super happy fun time. I'm just going to delete this old preset.txt. Clear the empty bin as well. Cool, and done. So now I have a new customized preset that I can bring back to my Arbhar. So let's eject the drive. So to load this preset now, I just need to pull my USB drive back over to the Arbhar. Pop that back in. And the button combo is Shift, Capture, and Strike to enter the menu. Go to the middle and select my bank 1, scene 1. There we go. If I now double tap Shift, that's going to load that scene. So for reference again, this is my dry signal. Okay, if I bring my Arbhar up, because I loaded the scene, it will probably have loaded the samples as well. Yep. Quite nice. So I'm going to be clearing this buffer. So if I do Shift and Strike, there we go, that's emptied the buffer. If I now patch my trigger output to the capture input, hit capture, this is the Arbhar now operating as a ring buffer, so it's now going to be constantly recording in. And we can see I can offset my playback speed, the follow speed, against the record speed. So there'll be a sweet spot where it's kind of just a little bit behind. So I'm getting that initial onset recorded in, or the live audio recorded in, and then the playback is just lagging a little bit behind for that granular delay effect. I've got a bit of spray up as well, so that's going to be just scattering a little bit about. So let's go dry. Bring up the Arbhar. There we go, that's cool. So you can hear those little octave shifts in there as well from the CV going into the pitch deviation. And that again, that's using that that cluster of different octave up, octave downs from the preset. Let's play with the delay a bit. Quite a nice position where it's just slight positive CV, and we get a sort of phaser chorus type effect. It's very spectral. And of course, if I go to negative CV, that enters the shorter car+ strong resonator type delay modes. Of course, I could always add CV into the delay. Let's see how that comes out. Bit of movement. A little bit extreme. I'll just set it at a manual position, I think. There we go, I'll change my voicing up a little bit. So yeah, that's how to fine-tune and curate and customize a preset on the Arbhar. It's a big improvement. I think I found it's so much more accessible for just experimenting and trying out presets and just jumping it between the editor and the module. Yeah, a really fun update. Okay, let's customize a couple of presets for the looper and explore how the preset management now works on version 2.1. So this patch I've got going on is a harmony voice, which is controlling a tona and psych as a sort of chordal supersaw voice. There's a little bit of rhythmic movement under the hood, which that's coming from this octone sequencing the wavefold depth of the tona, which is playing my root note. And then psych is giving me third and fifth, split between the four. The four oscillators. There we go. And then manual gate is opening the filter and a VCA via using the Cease2. And the whole thing's in stereo because I've got a DAP running with some triangle waves from the Oct, just shifting a stereo split of the source mono signal. So you can see the slight difference between our green and blue traces on the scope. So that's just slight subtle difference in stereo spread between left and right. My effects in this context using the looper, I'm actually going to keep them mono because I'm going to be using both decks discretely in two different presets that will complement each other. So the main goal that I'm going for here is to produce a form of shimmer reverb, which is a patch I've been playing about with as I've been testing the version 2.1. Thought it would make for a good demonstration. So yeah, let's dive in. So how does the preset management in version 2.1 work? I'll pull the USB drive and let's open that up on my laptop. Okay, here we are, USB disk, and folder structure, there's a slight difference now. So there's now a factory_presets folder, and this actually contains all the 10 factory presets that we introduced with version 2.0. So they're in this folder kind of more for reference, for lookup. The presets folder, that's still how you facilitate and curate what presets you want access to. But there's a difference in how we do that now. So previously there was an A preset and a B preset, and you could toggle between the two on the fly. But to set up which ones were A and B, you had to adapt a preset loader text file, which is a little bit clunky. But there's been a vast improvement in the whole system with version 2.1. To demonstrate, I'm just going to quickly copy my 10 factory presets and dump them into my presets folder. So I've now got 10 presets in this preset folder. If I pull that out, put it back in the looper. The new method for accessing presets now is you press and hold both shift buttons or the retrig buttons and then tap the erase button on the deck you want to load a preset on. So hold these two, tap erase, and now we can see the LED rings gone to this circular numeric display. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's all 10 files that I put into that folder now accessible. It's no longer it's just A or B. You can actually curate a folder's worth of presets. So long as you know what order they're in alphanumerically, that's the key detail. It'll look at them in that order. So let's say I wanted to just load, let's go 10. So select that one, hit record, and it's loaded that preset. Now record something in, and it's functioning in, that must be the broken tape preset, I think. Cool, so that's the mechanic for loading presets now, and much easier to hot swap to chop and change between. Let's edit a couple. So we've got the basis for our shimmer reverb. Okay, so here's my folder structure. I'm going to just delete everything from that presets folder because we'll be populating it with 2. You can see here there's a new looper presets editor.html file. So if I open up a browser, I can even just drag that to the browser and it's going to open up. So this is now a local running website, which is coming from this HTML file. So the looper itself will actually generate this editor file in the root directory of the USB drive if it's not already there. And this is the method of curating our presets. So no longer do we need to open up a text editor and figure out what variables to change. It's all drop-down menus and type in fields, which is much easier to follow. There's even each of the sections has got this details tab that you can click that drops down and shows little excerpts from the manual, little bits of documentation. So it's much easier to navigate and know what you're working with in terms of parameters. So by default, it's started with our tape looper factory preset. So this is just this always been kind of a baseline since V2.0 as a sort of a good default starting point for the looping engine on the looper. But if you want to start from any of the 10 factory presets, say I want to modify multi-tape, then I just need to drag that over to the drop zone, and it's loaded that, and it's changed all the variables of that particular preset. So very easy to just quickly pull in one of the pre-existing ones or any from your own library of presets and make changes on the fly. So I'm going to start with the tape looper, and I'm just going to use that to modify that to generate the 2 presets I'm going to be using. So on the left deck here, I'm going to keep with the tape looper preset, but I'm not actually going to be actively capturing with the patch that I'm using. I'm going to be utilizing the new built-in reverb that's been implemented version 2.1. So let's go through and just select the parameters that I'm going to need in this, which for any of the actual looping elements I don't need so much. User-defined time pop function. So this one I want to definitely stay on tape emulation amount. And that's because the reverb is integrated into the tape emulation settings. So when you bring up tape emulation, if there's an amount of reverb there, it's going to gradually bring that up as part of that cluster of parameters. I want to keep this quite clean, so I'm actually going to just simplify and zero out all the variables for my tape emulation, and just I'll keep the reverb there at 0.6. So these are all 0 to 1 floating point variables for each of the parameters. I think that might be it. I'm not sure I actually need anything else because I'm not going to be actively capturing. I'm just going to use audio throughput to utilize the reverb of this preset. So let's give it a name. Let's go Verb. That'll do. Oops. Hide those. And now if I generate configuration, you can see it's automatically created the preset text file. Much the same format as before. There's a bit less in terms of like comments and stuff because it's not needed because it auto generates from the editor. It even timestamps, date stamps it, which is quite useful just for bookkeeping, keeping track of your presets. So there we go. I'll now just download this. And let's put that into presets. There we go. So that's now my first preset in here. I'll just go ahead and do my second one while I'm at it. So let's restart from Tape Looper. And this one is going to be a bit more customized. So for the right deck, I'm going to use this as a form of octave delay, but I'll be using it as a feedback path from the reverb. So if I patch into my aux in and from my output, just sum that back into my main mix. Let's go from there to here. We can hear it's already feeding back because the output of each deck normals to the opposite deck's input. So the way I'm going to get around this is to change the input monitoring mode. So to do that, if I have both top buttons, both retrigs held, and I tap the raise button, it will go to pulsing. That's onset monitoring. So it will only start monitoring the throughput signal when it's capturing. If I go one more, then it's off, then this is monitoring off. So this way it's only going to playback from the buffer, but we're not actually going to hear the signal coming through. So this way I can bring up my input and output, and it's not going to feed back on its own in this configuration. Cool, so I'm going to use this as an octave delay type effect. The way that I'm going to configure this, if I have a record speed, let's set that to fixed. This way it's a constant recording buffer at a fixed sample rate, but my playback can be at perfect octave ratios from that. Single tab, speed control. So here's the main bit. So I want to go to stepped, and I could actually get rid of my original octave and half frequency sub. So I now have 0 position, so I can stall it if I need, and then go to 2 octaves up, or 1 octave up or 2 octaves up from original for the 2 times and 4 times. And this mirror, so it will be the same thing in reverse if I'm anti-clockwise from the center position of the speed control. Tape emulation amount. I'm going to keep the time pot on tape emulation because I'm actually going to use tape emulation as a factor in this octave delay. So when it's feeding back with the reverb, I'll be able to add a little deviation to get that sort of shimmer effect in there. Tape emulation. So I want to keep these as they are, as the sort of tape looper default. Reverb I'm going to remove, set that to 0. And what I have found, don't know how much difference this makes, but when I've been experimenting with this, I've been dropping the high cut down to about 10k just to sort of roll off and soften, especially because I'm playing with feedback here, so it's quite a smart safety move. Speed slew time, I'm going to remove any slew at all, set that to 0. So it means that when I turn my speed control, it's going to be really immediate jumps to my 2 octaves up, 1 octave up position. Let's name this. Let's go with 02 octave. And then generate configuration, download. And let's put that over in my presets folder. There we go. Presets built. So now I just pull this over to my looper. Let's load my first preset, which is the reverb. I'll load that on the left. So that's both shifts and arrays. And now when I turn the time pot, yep, it's only 1 and 2 as options. So let's select 1. That's done. Let's go over to the right. Select 2. Load that. And there we go. That's both these presets loaded into the looper. So let's listen to this reverb as a starting point. So there's my dry signal. And this should be going through the looper via the aux input and coming from it from the aux output. If I bring up my time pot, there we go. So this is the new reverb that Keane's been working on. He's really done a deep dive on diffusion networks and algorithmic diffusers. Yeah, it's a really nice single knob reverb that he's built in. And I think it can be pushed into quite extreme territory. So this is maxed out time pot, but I had 0.6 as my maximum level within the config file. Nice. Cool, okay, I'll keep that all the way down just now. So we're just hearing that dry layered in. And let's capture in a bit on my right deck and then keep it capturing. So I've got input monitoring off. So now if I bring this up, I'm going to be taking a branch of my output from this deck in, capturing in, and we're only hearing the delayed playback. So if I set this to here, this should be 1 octave up from original. There we go, and it's almost like this octave-based barbertone effect because the feedback is in the analog domain. It's playing in, recording originally, playing back an octave up, feeding back through my first deck, and then back into the second deck. So each octave up is getting shifted up an octave each time. If I change this to being in reverse, it's maybe a bit smoother. Change my voice a bit. I'll bring up the attack time so it's more of a swell, fewer aggressive transients. Cool, okay, that's working. I'm going to go to my time pot over tape emulation, and as I bring that up, we're going to just be getting that wall flutter, all the different tape emulation and degradation effects. Go, and let's start bringing our reverb up. And there we go, that's the shimmery sound. Yeah, that's how to edit and load presets with the Looper version 2.1. Definitely a big improvement, and there's a lot of exploration to be done.